you could do?
So I'm really big on this concept, and I just did a keynote presentation on something that I'm calling sustainable success. Because the reality of it is, so many of us created these bloated organizations, right? Because we created this model that said, great, customers of a certain size need certain resources. We've got all these leverage ratios, like how many customers each CSM can have. And this is the work that we do. And it never changed, right? Every 50 customers that came into the organization, great, meant we needed to hire another CSM. Well, with the economy doing what it's doing, and it will continue to do this, it's going to be a while before we can go back to hiring, before we will have more resources, whether that be money or people or technology. And the reality is we have to learn how to shift gears and build a sustainable success model. And so that has been a big area of focus. And I think that that is the direction that we're going to see everyone go. Now, to achieve that, though, we've got to do things differently. We cannot keep sounding this horn on this statement that irks me the most is like, we've got to do more with less. It's impossible. I'm not a math gal, but like, it just doesn't work. What you can do is something different with what you have. And that has been my mantra, right? Like, we don't have what we had, so we have to do something different with what we have if we still want to achieve those outcomes. And so what we're going to start to see is more focus on scaled models. Now, I'm not saying a tech touch. I'm not saying digital only. Scaled is different. These terms cannot be used synonymously. They all mean something different. There's a different approach. Pooled is not scaled. Scaled is not digital. So being able to, one, articulate what the difference of those three things are, but then putting more scaled programs in place, right? One-to-many initiatives, ways that you can onboard at scale, train and enable at scale, right? Communicate, connect, all of these things. Now, obviously, community is one aspect of that, but the scaled theme is going to be a big one. The next big thing we're going to see pop up is more focus around AI. Now, I know that is a total buzzword right now, and people are using it very tactically, like to do things like, great, I got email templates. I can build an account plan, a success plan. Those are cool ways to save time, but we're going to see AI integrated into technology in a way that is going to completely disrupt the way that we do work. And so I feel like that is going to help us build and contribute to the sustainable success model. And then lastly, I do believe that we're going to see a breakdown of what those roles look like and more of a move to the specialty model that I described earlier and what I'm tackling. You're going to see more of that. I think we will see the traditional catch-all CSM go away, because I do believe that that model is what's bloating these businesses. So when you see a breakdown of that, more move to specialty, again, it all contributes to that sustainable success.
Yeah, we're going to be, here's where I think we're going to be. So I think, I actually just wrote an article about this. I think that CX has hit its teenage phase. So it has grown from, birthed from a combination, as I mentioned before, of marketing, customer support, et cetera. Now it's its own discipline, but it doesn't quite know who it is yet. It's still trying to figure that out. Where do I sit? Am I a distinct function that reports to the executive level? Do I sit in marketing, maybe engineering, maybe customer support? I've seen it all over the place. Am I customer success? Am I customer experience? Is there a difference between those two terms?
Exactly.
Who am I? I think in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll know who we are as a discipline. And I think we will report, in most cases, to the C-level, because the data already shows that's where when CX reports to the C-level as opposed to into another function, that's where companies get the most bang for the buck. They get the highest renewal rates, they get the highest sales, et cetera. So I think that is where we're going to report to. I think we will probably be called customer experience versus customer success, which I think will be more focused in on the adoption specific portion of it, whereas customer experience will be everything. And I think that there will be there will be even more books about it than there are now, right? We'll be fully fledgling on our own young adults at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. They're even giving out degrees in it now. And I'm interviewing somebody from Michigan State soon that does a master's program on customer experience. You would never heard of that, 15 years ago.
Yeah, I said I started off my career in public relations.
Yeah.
And public relations, like a lot of careers, disciplines started the same way. It started off years ago with former journalists who decided they wanted to do something different. And started, flipped to the corporate side. And then started pitching their fellow journalists. And then it just sort of developed there, and then ultimately became its own field with its own professional association and magazines and consulting, agencies and degrees, et cetera. So very similar to that, I think.
Yeah, it's
Well, I think what's going to be interesting is the future, in my opinion, is we're going to change from being CX leaders and customer service agents to CX visionaries and customer service architects. And what I mean by that is I believe that if we really embrace AI and we really embrace the large language models, what it can do is it can turn our agents into architects. So rather than being the people that write the responses, they're architecting every experience that they have. So a bot can write 90% of the response, right? And they can look it over and review it and so forth. And that's great. But then they can architect, well, how do I customize this further? How do I make this more meaningful? How do I engage this customer, architect this experience with this particular customer so I know that they're going to come back? And so and then the CX visionaries, instead of being leaders, because architects are going to be leaders in their own right? So instead of being CX leaders, you're going to be visionaries, and you're going to be thinking, okay, if I have my 50 architects working, what are they designing now that I need to enable for the future to deliver even a more amazing experience, more stickiness, more innovation, right? And so I think that's my viewpoint on how things are going to change. And it might be that these customer service agents end up getting like $70,000 a year now instead of $30,000 in the U.S. using U.S. stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's going to be an interesting future. But I think companies that really embrace the architect mentality are going to see a huge difference in the way that their customers feel about them.
I find the future to be more and more centered around self-help and self-care for ourselves, but our customers as well. I find my goal is to make sure the customer success organization is redundant. You don't need a CSM. You need to be able to troubleshoot your problems and get your answers fast without even touching, having a conversation with a human being. So if I can make every interaction with our customers, every troubleshooting event, every search for information really, really easy. So by the time you open a window, let's say on our user community, and you type that you're looking for some sort of help, by the time you finish typing that, you already have your answer. To me, that's the ideal. We will always have a person behind it. We'll always have people just keeping an eye on how our customers are doing. But you recognize you don't scale if everything you do requires a person behind it. Our customers are complex and they use our software in complex ways. They have, needs and requirements that are very complex as well. So having one person to respond to everything, it's practically impossible.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're growing that community. We're growing every day. We're developing articles, knowledge articles. We want to make sure they get the information at their fingertips without even having to call our CSMs.
Yeah, I love that.
Wow. Well, I think everyone who is living right now, just the explosion of just OpenAI and GPTs and everything that's I know OpenAI owns GPT, but I think the idea of I think it's going to be. It's a hard one to answer, but I'm going to put myself out there a little bit. And I'm going to say in the next 12 months, we're going to see probably some of the most massive changes in service offerings, as well as just, the ability for individual, and I'll say like for my space, e-commerce brands to self-manage their own experiences in a way of, getting to data that they wouldn't normally be able to get to in a way that can be conversationally asked. I think AI has finally gotten here. I think we've been promised it for 10 years and there's been little glimpses of hope and then I also think like the natural language query of data is becoming so easy now. We had a situation where I've been playing with GPT for, I don't know, probably a solid year. And then just by trying to get to, can I ask simple questions of what my teams are doing? Like, can I build a strategy for a brand, asking questions and telling them, giving them my data and figuring out to get to kind of a baseline strategy? And, you can do those things. I think what's scary on that as well, do you have the expertise to then run those, spend your $50,000 that you were trying to do in all your channels to get, acquisition and hopefully grow your business. Like that's the piece I think is going to be shifting for like our organization or our industry. I think I've been looking, actually we're in the process of looking at replacing our ticketing, knowledge base and community applications, and being able to go through and looking kind of at the 5 top players and seeing how they're rolling out AI is really cool. I mean, being able to just see the knowledge, the ease of getting to knowledge now to solve a problem yourself. I mean, I love that. I mean, I'm a huge fan. I've been a huge fan of the KCS knowledge center service model for 25 years. And I always roll that out whenever I have the opportunity. And so being able to see that full circle of capture knowledge, one to many, get it in the hands of everyone to help, improve and get better. And now these got the LL or the large language models are just making it's making it so easy to share. And I love the idea that we can, throw a GPT on top of a controlled knowledge experience now, because that's been the kind of the concern is like, if you can go out there and ask anything out there and the stuff that you get back cannot be, can be 80% there, but that can be uncertain. So I don't know, to answer your question, I'm super excited for the next 12 months. I think especially as I help to turn around the product direction that we're going. I mean, we're right in the place of looking at how do we bring this in smartly to empower our end users to solve the problems that they need to do as easy and quickly as possible. So, I mean, yeah, it's an exciting time, but it's a scary time. And I can just see that the ability for end users to get more access to data is going to be tenfold.
Do you think that the application of artificial intelligence on these process, like the knowledge center, like now they have things where you can just like give this tool all your PDF files, right? And it'll analyze them and it'll just answer questions for you without doing anything. They're super duper simple. From a CEO perspective, do you find that really encouraging because it's going to allow you to save on like staffing costs or just the time in which your current staff spends answering specific questions? Do you see a better advantage from CX or from CEO?
That's a really good question. I would have to say both. Here's an example I'll give you. So we're looking at bringing in a new partner who has a product, and for us to do an integration into our product. Well, they have a wiki. It's, they've had 10 years building this wiki. It's amazing. So I was talking to their CEO and he's like, our CTO, and he's like, hey, well, all you have to do is go now get the new GPT, point it to our wiki, tell it, don't say this name, say your name. And now you have a robust, and I don't have to copy. I mean, before we'd have to export the wiki, pay someone to go through and change all the names, reword. And now we've got a 10-year-old wiki that gives us the ability to share that with our end users, but in a white label kind of environment. So, that kind of example of like, that just saved me a ton. Now I can have my people focus on more engagement with customers.
Yeah, so it's more teaching your team to apply these new AI tools so they can leverage and improve their efficiency and what they're doing. I use it all the time. Like this thing, I'm going to put our transcript into ChatGPT and it's going to spit out a whole blog post for me, and it's going to be fantastic. Oh, I love those tools. I think
that piece, especially for like the space we're in, where we're we have some really great creative partners, and the stuff they're doing to just be like, here's some raw data, give me creative for all my channels, write me the copy for all of it. It is just, that just time savings alone, it still doesn't make it so that like all that stuff, if not used correctly, isn't going to help drive your business, but the ability to get to a starting point to then shorten that window of time to market is going to be great. And I think that's the best use case right now is help me get to a next step faster. And that's
it's
how
a catalyst. I find it. Yeah. exactly like a catalyst. Although everything comes out like in the highly competitive nature of this industry, like it's the first sentence of everything.
You do have to you have to read it, but I think it's like, and sometimes I think just being in the creative space, and I think this is probably going to be something that will be interesting, or concerns I keep reading, is that everything starts to feel the same. Everything kind of starts to have the same look, the same tone. Like you have to rewrite the intros and exit of anything that you get out of these, the AI bots. But I think how you apply that is where the creativity next phase of business is going to be. Is like for us as an agency, I mean, we're here to be a partner and help grow and be the guardrails for don't spend too much or spend more here, or let's do this different strategy. And so for my team, it's going to be, okay, we've got the easy buttons maybe to create creative or do copy, but now we got to be creative in how we apply those to get eyeballs, because it's still going to be, we're paying to get acquisition, we're paying to get retention, we're trying to figure out how to manage costs, right? And so that's where our business is evolving, and I think the agency space overall in the e-commerce space is evolving. And I think people are, what I'm super excited about, I've been saying this to my team for about 12 months now, is I think with the shift of the economy, and it's more expensive now to go and get, the cost of acquisition through all the channels are getting expensive. But what's not is treating your customers amazingly on the back end, repurchase rates, tell them, spend the time on your lifetime value programs, talk to your customers. You've already paid to get them, and that's your best place for repurchase, referrals. So I think companies, especially I think in the next 12 months, are going to have to shift a lot more to treating their customers as prized possessions, because it's harder to go and get new ones now.
Sure. I think there's a few things I'm excited about in customer success. Excited to see how they play out. I think one thing, like certainly the tech industry is experiencing some challenges with the current economic state, and I'm hearing more and more about how to either monetize customer success or how to bring CSMs closer to renewals and expansion. I think that's something that kind of ebbs and flows, but in the near term, it seems like there is an increase in CSMs really having revenue targets of some kind. But the other thing that I'm really excited about and continuing to learn about is just how AI can play a role in customer success and the customer experience. It's been fun on my own to just start exploring some of the different AI tools that are out there and playing around with ways to do better data and analytics, to do better communication to our customers, and to be able to really support customers in new ways and learn about our customers in new ways. So I'm excited to see both how we can continue to be creative in utilizing the tools that are out there, but also what new tools come out to support that type of experience.
Yeah, there's going to be
there's going to be a lot of innovation. Everybody wants to talk about AI. And I actually, my hope is that the future in CX is we kind of get back to some of the basics. With all of this advancement in technology and capability and innovation, I think we actually do a disservice to the vast majority of our CX professionals across the businesses, across the industries. We've got to help everyone understand that, again, CX doesn't have to be hard. I would argue CX is actually quite easy, because it comes down to, again, listening and acting. Now, it's more complicated than that when you start to continuously improve within those. But at the end of the day, it comes down to listening and acting. The hard part is the influence and the leadership. And so I'm beginning to see more and more focus around how do you do that effectively. And I think that's the direction we have to go. When you have all these different conferences and focuses, and it's always digital, and the next website and the next AI. And I think that if we're going to be better as a profession, if we're going to be better for business, if we're going to maintain a seat at the table with the C-suite, it's going to be that we have to be effective at influencing and leading the organization through those complex challenges. And so I really hope that that's the future of CX, at least for the next 5 to 10 years, is let's talk more about how do we do this effectively versus what's the next expensive toy that we're going to throw at you and try to get you to lock into that actually is not going to work because it's not going to be delivered well. It's not what your customers need. It's not going to drive action. You're not going to be able to influence and improve performance for the customer. So that's where I think it should go.
Yeah, I agree.
Where it does go is probably around AI everything, how to use Chat GPT to solve everything. And quite honestly, the solution to your customers' needs will always be predominantly human.
Yes.
It will not be always system based. And so if you think like a human and you act like a human and you're human to your customers, you're in a far better position to have a great relationship for the long term.
I agree.
Oh, I get asked that so many times, and I think I'll bucket it into two things. The first that I would say is at its core, with all of the AI and all of the information that we have and all of the data, I think it is still so important to not forget the human aspect of the customer experience. And, we hear so much about, AI is going to do this and it's going to do that and it's going to, minimize what we need to do. But at the end of the day, the humanity and the empathy of what we deliver is so important. So if you think about the how and the what, if you're on the phone trying to get something resolved or even online, if somebody is not empathetic in understanding and saying, I've heard you and I am going to make this better, as opposed to becoming kind of this robot. I absolutely think at its core that is something that we absolutely need to always focus on, is the human aspect. I also think that the ways of actually leveraging all kinds of feedback from the customer and trying to really, again, put the human into it, but take action. It's one of the things that may not be super futuristic, but it's something that I see over and over and over. And as a CX professional myself, I sometimes don't take surveys or I don't give feedback because I know nothing's going to be done about it. And I think that really lies in the future of what we need to do, is act on that feedback, fix it so it doesn't happen again, and then remain kind of that human and empathetic element is just absolutely so critical. Of course, AI is going to be there and it's only going to help us. But if we forget about the human aspect of things and lack to understand what we're doing, it's going to put us more in a world of hurt. So I'm very much bullish on continuing to keep empathy, humanity, and action on everything the customer is telling you.
Yeah, I agree. Like, the customer experience inherently is going to be, with a person, right? Some people want that all automated robot app type of response, but some people don't. You have to be able to be there for them and keep that at a very high level. It's so frustrating when you're using an app and you can't get where you want, and then you're calling a call center and they're like, fill out a form. And like, I just want to pay you my money, I run that with my cable company. It's so frustrating.
And know me, right? Like, from the base back to humanity, like, know who I am, know what relationship I have with you. And so oftentimes you're having to repeat your story 3 times in order to get your problem solved. And again, these are not new, like, huge, innovative kinds of things. The AI component is going to only, I think, get more strong, but actually building the human pieces back in is absolutely critical.
People want.
Yeah, I think it's multi-levered. So our organization and many organizations have really moved to work at home. And I believe that has been a game changer. There are people that maybe came out of retirement because they can work at home and they have amazing customer service skills. They have amazing work ethic. They really want to help people out, but it maybe wouldn't have been an opportunity for them to be driving to an office somewhere. So that is one thing that I think is huge. You think about some of the small communities, both throughout the United States as well as internationally, where people can afford housing because they're maybe in a small town where they can have a school district that works for them or a schedule that works for them. And we have seen overall with work at home, agents are happier. If agents are happier, generally everything else is easy, for lack of a better word, from the end of it. We've seen more opportunity internationally as well. because of some of the employment rates and just generationally, people in the United States and Europe are having less children at a later stage in life. So from a population standpoint, there are a lot of really strong, educated team members in Africa, Central America, South America, that maybe prior to the pandemic wasn't something that that was being taken advantage of fully, but just because of kind of the generational need for workforce, we've seen that. And then secondly, the willingness of people to centralize and be served virtually. You know, prior to the pandemic, telemedicine existed, but it was at a very low adoption rate. And one of the things I always say is that necessity is the mother of invention. Things are invented out of need, but adoption is the mother of desperation. So even though a lot of the tools that were Zoom, you know, the call we're on right now, a lot of these things were invented prior to the pandemic, but a lot of them really got adopted during the pandemic because there were no options. So I think of telehealth. I think of a lot of different food ordering type systems. A lot of the things that were done face to face just because they'd always been done that way, I really think are starting to move to more of a virtual environment. It's more convenient for everybody. It's less expensive. And it does allow you to take advantage of workforces that are maybe in a more rural community, smaller community, or near shore or offshore from that.
Yeah.
I think that the future, the people who are going to succeed, you mentioned AI, and of course we're involved in artificial intelligence, are the ones that are going to see things like AI, things like machine learning, tools like those, even though we don't do it, AR, VR, XR, they're going to see those things as tools, not as replacements. And what do I mean by that? I was reading an article the other day about how AI, especially like ChatGPT, that's some of the buzzwords right now, is giving university professors a fit because they can't possibly check and see if people did the work, or it would be too time consuming for them. And the things are so well written in a lot of cases, and we've done some experiments with that too. It's kind of funny to see, but at the same time, it's a tool. It's, you know, there will always be, or should always be, a human involved in the process. Look at things like manufacturing. We don't have the guys like standing there usually hand welding those cars anymore. You know, there's spot welders and such. They're done by machine, and they should be used as tools to take care of like maybe a big chunk even of the background process. Maybe you can utilize AI to and ChatGPT, for instance, to utilize them on 3/4 of an assignment, 80% of an assignment. But they are strictly tools. And the reason I cite those numbers is I remember I was at a family office event in New York several months ago. And the one question was, who here in this room has used AI or is familiar with AI? I was probably the only dev shop there, but I wasn't the only person who raised my hand, but my hand went up. And of course, being in the front, I got called on. And they asked what I thought of AI. I said, well, I think it's a great tool, but I think it's several years from really showing you what it can do, but there will always be human element. Well, you wouldn't have thought with some of the responses from people in the room that I insulted their child and told them they were ugly or something. I mean, that's how passionate people were about how wrong I was about AI.
Wow. And
I still remember the one woman said, well, it gets me done 80% of what I need to get done. And I said, well, that's fantastic. And I'm glad it's cut your workload by 80%. My father had triple bypass surgery several years ago. I thank God that the surgeon couldn't just get me 80% of the way, or get him 80% of the way there.
Yeah.
So it's used as a complement. It's not used as a replacement. So I think that's one of the pressing issues right now, is that people think of it as a total replacement, and it's not.
Yeah, definitely not.
I believe that companies that are focusing intentionally, investing in CX, who I think CX teams are the glue to the organization. So the companies that continue to invest in the CX practice while using technology to enhance experiences, not replace, the merge is where we're going. And the companies that really understand that well will continue to thrive.
I think we're at a crossroads right now where we need to be able to demonstrate our viability. There's a lot of CX functions that are collapsing, and I think it kind of gets back to what I talked about, the inability to demonstrate at the C-suite level the value of the CX function, and how CX goals align with business goals, and to be in that conversation at a regular level. At the same time, consumers are forcing organizations to evolve because they're forced to recognize how consumers are using online reviews and what they're finding online to inform their decisions as to what they buy and where they go. So to me, the future of CX does lie with reimagining and understanding what marketing really means. And my definition of marketing has always been providing solutions to people's problems. It's not promoting those solutions, it's providing the solutions. So then you said, well, then if that's marketing, how is that different than operations? And it's not. The two need to work hands in hand. If you look at brand alignment is a function of what expectations are you creating and where do those come from? And it's being able to deliver on that. And people are always going to be a part of that. So it's recruiting the right people. To what extent are they aligned with the organization's values? It's mission. How are they able to deliver on your mission, and how engaged are they with your vision, and how do you develop them over time? So it's kind of like a pyramid. In fact, if you go back and if you Google the services marketing triangle, that's exactly what it is. On one side, you've got what you're communicating, and then you have external marketing, you have internal marketing, which is how are you developing the brand internally in terms of, and also your people to deliver on what you're communicating. And then there's interactive marketing, which is actually the experience in delivering on that. And I see that coming to life, where it's at some point, marketing and operations will merge and they will become the experience, not just customer experience. Because you and I know employee experience is every bit a part of that. Think about how our attitudes towards our jobs and what we do change on a daily basis based on the environment that we work. And that's a reality in every organization. And some organizations do it well and some don't. So that's how I imagine the future for CX. But we've got to, we need to first help the traditional leaders of organizations to understand the value of what we do and break that mental mode of a very traditional operational model.
So I think part of it depends on where the market goes. I don't think we're going back to, growth at all costs and we're going to get, it's easy to get new customers, new logos. So I think you're going to still have a lot of emphasis on retention and growth of your existing customer base. I think it's the other part of it's going to depend on is if we as customer success executives are able to show and get buy-in that we are delivering on the revenue that is coming from customers as opposed to prospects. If we can show that, I think it'll give us a lot of opportunity to build out those teams. The other thing is that I think there's going to be much bigger push towards automation and streamlining processes, most likely through some sort of technology, especially where you've got a SMB market. It is absolutely impossible to be able to find out what's going on with 1,000 customers, and be able to address that. And the only way to do that really is to have some software, some automation that allows you to flag or automatically flags when something's going on with the customer, or allows you to communicate with the customer, or allows you to present data that the customer can use for their decision makers.
Yeah,
so I think those are the big things those are gonna happen.
That makes total sense. What else should we know about you?
I mean, from what I'm saying, I think it's clear that I'm very excited and a big believer of customer success, and am trying to do what I can to continue making its case making adjustments where necessary, but making its case and giving customer success the opportunity to shine and be a critical part of a company. The other piece that's related to this is I'm also a big fan of the being customer centric. With my early customers, my early clients, I'm trying to get them to understand that customer success is a responsibility of the whole company. And you don't need necessarily a function to get it working. What you need is to understand what it means to be customer centric and how do you set up the way you communicate, the way you work with clients to do that across the board.
Yeah, I mean, I've been at it a while. I've seen a bit of a divergence in kind of customer success. To me, has been questioning its purpose for a while, and so and I think it's perfectly normal and perfectly fine that there's varying interpretations of what the responsibility should be. What I've seen a lot of recently is twofold. One, I've seen a lot of people talking more about customer success owning revenue, owning not all revenue, but owning net revenue retention and account growth and contracting and other things. And then I've also seen a second theme that is scaling your customer success through some degree of automation and through larger portfolios and through kind of AI and intelligence and such. I think they're counterintuitive. Like they're kind of, they don't go well together. And so for me, I think what we'll see is the kind of emergence of some more specified roles in the customer success space. I think what we'll start to see is, hey, look, the way that you handle this $500,000 ARR account requires vastly different infrastructure and vastly different CSMs than the way that you handle this $300 MRR account, right? Like, I guess to summarize, I think we'll start to see a lot more role specialization in customer success as we just crack this space open and we get deeper and have a stronger understanding of it.
I'm in full agreement. I see more and more customer success jobs popping up all over the place, and they seem to be more of an important role in all sorts of companies. The trend is going that way. Being in the marketing department of a few different companies, this was always just something that was on the side or something we didn't focus on, and now it's an actual role you would have in almost any marketing organization or company. So, I want to get on your soapbox a little bit here. If you had any advice for an aspiring customer experience professional, what would it be?
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably go back to what I was saying earlier. Understand your customers, understand your customers' objectives and like why they buy software, and ultimately what the underlying motivations are for them to make a buying decision that ended in doing business with you. I would say. Yeah, I'm trying to think of just all the different things, right? Like, know your customers, understand their objectives. Internal operations is a fairly large part of my job, and that's it does lead me into a lot of like the connective tissue across the entire company, like those transfer moments for a customer, right? When a customer goes from sales to implementation, or they go from implementation to CS or to support or whatever that journey is, those are moments that matter, like those operational transfers internally. And so I spend a lot of time fine-tuning those and making sure that the customer is not aware that they're being transferred or aware that they're part of a kind of conveyor belt of sorts. And that's a lot of the operational overhead that I have to spend time on. So I don't know, just general answer.
So how do you measure that? How do you measure if those transitions are going well? Ideally, the customer would have no idea, right? These different life cycle stages of their life with your company. So how do you measure those and know that you're doing well and there's satisfaction there?
Well, so I say it's one of those things where, when it's not going well, you'll know about it.
Yeah.
And when it's going well, you won't know about it, right? Like,
Yeah.
so I will do a lot of overlapping transfer moments. So for instance, I'll bring in the implementation team pre-sale at like 80% probability. So when a deal gets to about 80%, 85%, depends on what the deal velocity is, but I'll start bringing in the implementation team to become more aware of that, maybe get introduced. I might in some cases go in and do a presentation about the implementation experience.
Mm-hmm.
You start kind of refining that transfer so that by the time it happens, it doesn't feel like a transfer. It feels like, you know, a baton being very smoothly handed off right to the next person. It's not very abrupt. So I haven't come up with a way to measure them other than when you get, you know, a nasty email from a customer who says, hey, I talked to so-and-so and they have no idea what my project's about, or they don't know anything about my customer. Internally too, right? The way that data follows a customer is pretty important. I found historically that there's so much information that is gathered and abandoned at each stage that it is like a shameful almost, right? Like the amount of information that AEs understand about a customer, and as they know, you know, the personal details about that prospect, they know the pain points, they know the buyer's objectives. And so if you've got good systems of record to collect that, pass it over in an elegant way where it's not completely lost and has to be regained, right? It's just very basic information flow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Well, you know, the global economy is not amazing at the moment. I think we can all agree to that. And I would say right now, even more so than, you know, in previous years, retention is like a primary focus and discussion point right now, because we're not in growth mode with most software companies. We're trying to just retain what we have. And so I think right now the customer success team is being much more appreciated, and people are spending, and they have the stage, which, you know, my philosophy on CS, and always has been, companies that really value their CS team have happy customers. Companies that don't tend to have a mixed bag of the customers have a mixed bag of experience. And I also tend to notice that retention is not necessarily always as high as it could be, given that that's not the focus. Like the customer experience really should be the ultimate focus, especially when we're in a subscription-based model where you're counting on that renewal as part of your business model. Right now, it's not so much about the growth in the new business as it is about retaining customers. And I think that I'm excited about companies spending more resources in the department. I know there's a lot of amazing CS solutions out there. I've used some of them, but there's more than even what I've used. And I'm excited to see where those companies go.
Yeah.
I think customer experience has to learn to get the basics done well. And I think we're still establishing that. I think we're still quite new. My personal gateway into customer experience is voice of the customer. And what I see is our businesses who aren't listening to customers, aren't hearing their needs, aren't hearing their problems, but then go ahead and assume they know customers well enough to design a new product, service, or journey. So I think the future of CX is to a large extent getting back to basics. I think that we need. What I love about customer experience is that we've all got such different backgrounds. I'm from process management and improvement, change management, project management, and quality. That's where I started, and I started with customer satisfaction before those other skills, before customer experience. And I know many amazing people who've come from a customer services background or customer success background. And I think what we need still in customer experience is a little bit of a settling down of all those different voices, so that we are more clear and more transparent on what we're saying and how we want to manage customer experience. So again, it's a little bit about back to basics. I think most excitingly, we have the opportunity to use technology to analyze data in ways that we have never ever analyzed it before. And when I speak about reducing costs, what I really would love to do and love helping businesses do is take people off that non-value added activity of resetting passwords and resolving an address change to actually more customer understanding. It can be a customer experience tool, or it could be something like ethnographic observations, just really getting to know our customers and communicating about them. And I think in that way we can take CX out of the preserve of the customer experience team and make sure it is owned by everyone and everybody knows they own the whole.
I couldn't.